Welcome to another episode of the Zaui podcast. I've got a fun one for you guys here today. We are joined by Simon Burke, who is the founder of Txango Tours. Now, Simon moved from teaching history to building a vintage sidecar business across Europe. But the real story here is how he handles that heavy lifting. He's tackling the exact same problems that's keeping, a lot of other operators up at night, scaling across multiple cities, managing human-dependent capacity, and refusing to settle for a cookie-cutter tech. Now, there are going to be a ton of lessons in this session here. There's going to be some real adaptable takeaways on how you can force your technology to adapt to your business and really not the other way around. So, hop on the sidecar, get your helmets on, because this is going to be a fun ride. Simon, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for taking the time here. So, first and foremost, Simon, you have such a fun and unique tour, right? Driving around in a vintage style car, zipping around the streets of, Paris, but also other European cities. Drive around the Eiffel Tower. I mean, that just sounds like a fun and exciting way to, experience Paris. So before we get too deep into it, I really just want to understand, especially for the listeners who aren't really too aware of what this is, what exactly is a sidecar tour, and why did you decide to build a business around it?
That's a good question. Okay. We'll tackle the first bit. What is a sidecar tour? So a sidecar motorcycle, if anybody has watched the Indiana Jones original trilogy, the Last Crusade one with Sean Connery, there's a scene where they drive a sidecar. It's a motorcycle with a laterally attached bucket or chair, as we call it in the motorcycle game. And so it essentially turns a motorcycle from a two-seater into a three-seater, and it is the perfect way to take a couple of people out and around in a city, because you have, from a passenger's perspective, all of the pros of being on a tiny little vehicle and all of the benefits of still being able to move around in a motorized fashion. For the actual driver, a lot of motorcyclists actually hate sidecars because you have all of the downsides of motorcycling and all of the downsides of a car. So you can't split lanes because you have the bucket. You still get wet when it rains. So depending on who you talk to, motorcyclists, it's really love or hate, a lot of hate, but you get just a few people who love it. And then when it comes to customers, it's 99% love. You have all the thrills of being on a motorcycle without the scary part of leaning, or the fact that you have to just be one person kind of barnacled on the back of the driver. A sidecar is a lot more laid back. You can sit up, lean back, take photos. You can hands-free really document your experience. What was the second part of your question? How did I come up with this idea?
Yeah, why'd you decide to build a business around it?
It goes back quite a ways. I was having a bad day at work in 2015. I had always loved motorcycles, and I've always worked in tourism. Yeah, I went to school to be a history teacher, but I very quickly shifted to being a tour guide. It's way more fun, spending so much time outside. Um, and so I was having a bad day at work in 2015. Loved tourism, loved motorcycles, and I thought a sidecar would be a cool way to take people around, because as a tour guide, taking out only one person on a date tour is no fun. But once you have a couple, then you can end up getting some traction. You get a second vehicle, you can take families of three or four, and so on and so forth. It seems much more scalable. But then I saw that someone else had just started doing it, so I kind of shelved it, slept on it. The next week at work was much better, and it took me until COVID, when I had to leave my job with another tourism company. The idea popped back in my head, and I told my wife I was going to do this, and she just looked at me and like went, "Okay."
It's awesome. So this, the idea for this business, it was kind of born around the COVID time.
Yes, yeah. I had just finished a round of economic. I think in English they're called economic redundancies. So we had gone through the first year of lockdowns. I had to let go of all of our new tour guide hires. All the seasonal staff was dropped in March of 2020, and a year later, even though we had all sorts of payroll protection plans in Europe, all of our European cities were still bleeding so much money over that year that I had to start terminating our permanent staff, the admin people, the managers, those on open ended or permanent contracts. That's when I realized that my days were numbered. Um, I didn't. I was actually doing all this remotely from my dad's place in the southwest of France, and I didn't want to go back to Paris. The atmosphere was just so depressing. And my wife and I were getting on the train with our kids to go back to Paris, and it just, I don't know, it just came out of nowhere. It hit me that I had this idea once upon a time ago, and that maybe it could work. That, if I leave the tourism company I was working for, well, I didn't really want to do anything else. I had applied for HR jobs elsewhere. That's what I was doing in tourism. But it wasn't the HR thing that interested me. It was the tourism game that I found so passionate, so that I felt so passionately about. And so I decided finally it was my moment to combine the motorcycles and the tourism to create my own thing. I knew tourism would come back. It was just a matter of time. So
Yeah.
I had an opportunity to start small and organically, and go from there.
That's such an incredible startup story because I mean, here you are with this idea, this passion for the travel and the tourism space, and you're like, you know what? I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna make that jump off the cliff into this business idea that I've been processing for all this time. And as soon as you do that, the world is like, you know what? We're gonna shut down tourism. It's just. But then that didn't make you stop. You were able to take whatever happened and move forward, which is pretty amazing story of resilience. That's kind of the period in time where being in this industry, I heard of a lot of companies that really didn't make it, but as a startup, seeing you kind of go through that and then come out of it substantially stronger is actually such a inspiring story. Um, let's actually dig a little bit during that period of time because I'm sure you went through a lot of challenges. You kind of mentioned a few of them there, but as we start coming out of kind of this COVID area, what did you do? How were you planning for what's next? How were you essentially creating this environment where you're like, all right, I know travel is coming back. What were some stuff that you did during that period of time so you were prepared?
Man, I did everything all at the same time. I was lucky that I had spent a total of 13 years at that company, and they had operations all over Europe and the States. So I went from being a tour guide to an HR manager in one city to the HR director for multiple cities across Europe. So I was very close with the marketing director, finance director, and we were a very tight knit team of experts in our field within the tourism industry. So when I had to leave, which the timing when you think about it was actually perfect because I left really at the bottom of the tourism industry. So there's only one way to go afterwards, right?
That's
So
a good way of looking at it.
so, so I officially left in July 2021. That was my last day of work at the beginning of that month. So I took a month off in the middle of summer. I had never done that before since college. So that was nice. And then I went right to work doing everything, finding a friend who was a graphic designer to make my logo. I reached out to a bunch of different booking softwares, but I guess we'll dive into that a little bit later. I don't want no spoilers. Um, uh, I reached out to find the best to find the best person to make a website for me, um, and OTAs I mean, there were multiple things that I knew I needed to have completed because I was doing all of this work as the typical season was ending. And it was August and through winter, and I managed to get everything done. That also includes insurance. incorporating the actual business, getting the appropriate licenses. And so I was ready by February 2022, and I had my first guests on the 16th of March 2022, exactly 2 years after our first lockdown in Paris, which was 16th of March 2020.
Oh, that's amazing. That must have been exactly what you needed at that point. You're like, "Yup, there we go. This is what I
I
this
was
is what I worked
thrilling.
for."
My blood was
Yeah, I
pumping.
bet. I bet. That's awesome. Okay, so we had the challenge period in the very beginning, and then you had that first guess, which is pretty amazing, and then the ball started rolling, right? It kind of things started working out. Let's dig a little bit into that growth phase. First of all, scaling really isn't about doing more, right? It's about doing things differently, and in that in that specific phase, you shifted from small operations to really a real brand. And let's be honest, Paris is a very competitive travel market. So how were you able to identify your winning niche in this such a competitive market? What was the thing that was it about you guys?
Well, Paris, as compared to Madrid, was unique in that there was already another sidecar tour operator in operation, and so the concept was well known already. It would have been harder if there were multiple sidecar tour operators, and it would have been harder if there were zero sidecar tour operators. But there was one. So
Yeah.
all I had to do was be better than that guy. That's it.
So you had your goal pretty determined. You were like
Yes.
that's it.
And
Yeah.
I had been on. I doubt they're going to listen to this podcast. They're all French, and they have. I don't think they've heard of Zaui unless they've really been digging into my website. They no, we're on good terms now. But at the beginning, I used my all of my previous experience in the tourism industry, from being a tour guide right up to being an HR director, to make my business, although much smaller, much better than them. I took the time. The biggest thing I did was that I really invested time in training my tour guides to be actual tour guides and not just drivers, as many vehicle tour operators do in Paris, that would just cruise by and be like, "Oh, look, the Eiffel Tower. Okay, we keep going." We would stop, we would exit, or we can't exit a sidecar. You'd hop off of the rig, and there would be real storytelling and discovery of what makes the city tick, which you can't do with a drive-by. You can't do with just 30-second sound bites and a couple of iPhone photos. So it was a lot more discussion based, much more intimate. Our groups were very small. But when I started that first year, I was by myself with just one sidecar. I could only take two people per tour. And luckily, I bumped into someone, this kind of crazy local guy who had his own sidecar, thankfully, the same color scheme as mine. And so when I had families of three or four, I would just call him and say, "Hey, can you come join me for this tour?" And he would just, his English wasn't good enough to be a tour guide, so I was always the tour guide, and he would follow, and then we would dismount at certain areas, and I would be the tour guide for the three or four people on those tours. So that first year was the test. And when I saw that it worked, immediately towards the once the season started calming down, I went to work recruiting and hiring and training other tour guides, because that's the first thing I knew from my experience at the previous company. The first thing I knew I needed to do in order to build the business was to let go of the handlebars. I have a picture of myself taken by a customer where I have my phone wedged in my helmet, and I'm talking to a hotel concierge booking another tour for that afternoon while giving a tour and driving the sidecar. That's just not sustainable. So I needed to remove myself from the field in order to keep growing the business. So the first thing I did at the end of that first year was find other people to be tour guides.
And then, as you did start to grow, how did your strategy change? How did you know that yes, I should be investing more into this? Because how many guides do you have right now?
In Paris, we have six actual tour guides, not counting myself. I almost never give tours anymore. And then we have a few other ad hoc drivers that can join in that either don't have the knowledge or the time to learn the history of the city, or their English just isn't quite there, and they'd
I
rather
guess
just
big
sit back
factors.
and drive.
Yeah, yeah. So if there is a company, that's listening to this podcast right now, and they were where you were in the very beginning there, you know, what is some strategies that you would advise them? Some things that worked for you in terms of, letting go of that handlebar, as you mentioned it. How did you know that? Yeah, okay, this is time, and I should be growing. What were signals from the market? What were signals from your customers, and then from yourself? How did you know?
Um, wow, signals from the market. I mean, I had only done that 1 year, but I could see how much my competition was turning over. Um, and I would get more and more phone calls from people who were looking to do a sidecar tour, but either my competition was booked out or they weren't getting answers on the phone or via email, so they just Googled sidecar tour companies, and there was only two of us. So because I knew I was getting that runoff, I knew that there was room to actually compete seriously rather than just taking the crumbs that are falling from the table. I wanted to be up there sitting at the table. So is that a weird analogy?
No, I like it. Okay, so while we're in the kind of talking about this growth phase, you've recently expanded into Madrid, right? First of all,
Mhm.
congratulations on that expansion.
Thank you.
Really, really exciting to see you go from one city to the next one there. I wanna dig a little bit into that decision. First of all, when did you or how did you realize that yeah, this is time to expand into another city, and then why Madrid specifically?
Oh man, yeah, we can. Well, how much time do we have? Because there was a little bit of your previous question that I hadn't answered about, um, like advice to give to someone who wants to grow beyond themselves, right? That's what I told you part of what the market was telling me, but because I have a lot of other friends who are tour operators, and a lot of us are a little bit persnickety. We like things done a certain way. But really, to grow, just the way someone gambles on themselves when they want to open their own business, you have to take that mindset and gamble on the people that you want working with you and give them the opportunity to grow into their roles. Otherwise, you're going to be stuck doing everything, and that's just not sustainable. That it's also something that helps keep the culture of the tours and the business going, because even though I move further and further away from customers, I'm still giving a lot of myself into the people I'm training to work those positions for me. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
So you
So
already gambled on yourself, now you have to gamble on other people, and then
yeah,
eventually
I like
you
that.
might
But how
make
do you?
people
Okay,
involved.
so you made this massive bet on yourself, and now you're making a bet on the people that you hired, the people that you trusted. Like, how do you actually do that? Right? How do you know that? Okay, you know what? Here are 10 things that I did that helped the business grow. Let me just step back and let these 10 people take that on. How that specific point?
There isn't a specific point. It takes really what it requires is an enormous amount of patience, because I mean, even today there are some people that have been working with me for a few years and they still do stuff that drives me bonkers. But it's part of growth. You can't grow without some aches and pains. A big part is being able to read them during an interview, but then it continues throughout the hiring process, throughout their training process, and throughout their kind of first weeks, months on the job. As a business owner, we're constantly learning new things and growing. And I feel like because I understand it's the same thing for some of the people working with me, it allows us to feel like we're growing together. And that makes a pretty cool team atmosphere. It can't be all work. It's tourism. We're in the business of fun. So I take the gang for beers and we do karaoke and stuff like that. And having a healthy balance between, hey, we need to actually take our jobs really seriously, but then we can't take ourselves too seriously. Let's go, blow off some steam.
For sure. So it becomes more than just clocking in, clocking out. You're a part of something bigger. You're growing something. You're a part of a company that's it's got ambitions, and you want to kind of be a part of that. That's pretty awesome. So would you say one of your strategies or one of your competitive advantages is that your ability to hire people, your ability to keep people and train them?
Yeah, definitely. That was starting out. That was my superpower. That's the one thing that I don't outsource. When I need to find staff and guides, I do all of that myself. Um, I've had to uh, take some lessons when it comes to financial planning. I've had to take some lessons when it comes to marketing, but the HR side of it, I feel like I have that down pat.
That's amazing. I mean, okay, so this is a topic that we could spend another hour. Oh, by the way, it's a podcast. There's no rules. That's why I love the podcast style. So we can go as long as we need to or as short as we need to. So not a problem in that sense. But yeah, so I mean, in terms of hiring and staff, yeah, so that can be an entire 1 hour podcast that we can do just on
Yeah,
that topic
sorry.
because there's so much to it.
We don't need to keep going down that road.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
I do want one thing. Are you able to get so if someone that's hiring right now or they're listening to this podcast and they're having kind of issues with people and are you able to just give me one thing that you would say is you know what, here's one strategy that I know works, here's one strategy in hiring that you should keep in mind, so if there was one takeaway from a hiring side, what can that be from you?
Ooh,
I know it's a hard question. I kind of put you on the
yeah,
spot there.
that's a really hard question. Well, we're in the tourism industry. A lot of the hires are tour guides. They're the faces of the company. That's what people book tours for, is to have a fantastic tour guide. It's what makes people want to leave reviews and come back. So I'll talk about it from that lens. Let's say we're hiring tour guides. I usually have a pretty good idea within like the first 30 seconds of a phone call if we're going to be able to keep going. If a tour guide, my first question is always pretty open and just, well, I'm curious. Tell me about yourself. Doesn't have to be from what you wrote on your resume, but where do you come from? What landed you here? Paint me a picture. And that's it. Nice and open ended. If people have a hard time talking about themselves, they're not going to have an easy time talking about a whole lot of other things either. So that it's a good first indicator. If someone remains just vehemently in interview mode, it's like, oh, well, let me tell you about myself. I went to this school and I studied these subjects and I got these grades and I was, a lot of trumpet playing.
Yeah.
Um, then that's immediately, it puts them in the red.
So that people skill, that ability to uh, really just be there more as a person than being in an actual interview, because it's there's a lot of jobs where yeah, I want to know about your school, your achievements, and but when it comes to being a tour guide, it's really more so about the person himself, the personality, and what they bring in. So you have this ability to see past that. You have the ability to kind of see through it, and see the person that's sitting there after that interview. Would you say that's kind of
Exactly.
your yeah? That's
Yeah,
awesome.
there was also, I mean, you're only going to do yourself favors if in the job description that's already listed,
It's,
because then you can, the more content you have about the positions you're hiring for. It's kind of like, what do they like to call it, inbound marketing, right? You put all this content out talking about the position. If someone shows up and talks to you like they haven't read any of that, that's, another strike against them. But if they read the job advertisement or the job post, they're like, ooh, they want fun loving, extroverted, exuberant people, and they show up like a stick in the mud. Well, that's nope.
for
No, thank
sure.
you. Next one.
Simplifies the decision for you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's the two beers and a puppy question. If you think to yourself, do I want to have two beers with this person? Yes. Okay, that's good. But then you have to ask yourself, would I trust this person to keep my puppy alive or to take care of my puppy overnight? if it's a yes to both of those questions, then you have a solid person sitting in front of you.
Oh, that's an interesting little litmus test. I like that.
Yeah.
Well, there you go. That's a takeaway right there. So for you guys listening, if you're just had an interview, run those questions and see what the answer is, and then you know right away. I love it. Okay, cool. Well, I guess
Did you want to switch
the
to
Madrid
Madrid? Did
expansion.
you wanted to ask me about that
Yes,
earlier?
the Madrid expansion. Yeah. So what drove that decision, and why Madrid specifically?
A few reasons. It's never a straight path, especially with sidecars. You know, you let go of the handlebars and they veer in one direction or the other. So Madrid is no exception. I didn't initially choose Madrid as the second city I wanted to expand to, but I knew I wanted to expand to another city. That much I knew because of market constraints in Paris. My competitor has a 6 year head start on me. It's We've seen great growth in Paris, but I know that there's going to come a time where either we're going to butt heads, or who knows, if I want to make my business sellable to them, it's going to be great if I have a city that they don't, because they franchised out all over the place. So I initially chose London, and I went through quite a fair number of steps to open in London. The two cities are connected by the Eurostar. Customers that come to Paris often will make the trip to London for a day or two, and vice versa. So they're very, very complementary markets. Travelers that go to one are often in the other. Right? You could almost see them as overlapping markets. Um, but I ended up hitting so many brick walls, especially when it comes to an organization called Transport for London. They are the governing body that regulates anything transport related, whether it's for tourism or strictly transport. So the minute you bring vehicles into it, they're going to come down with a hammer and make sure you follow every single rule, of which there are an enormous amount. It's a much, much more heavily regulated part of the industry compared to continental Europe. Actually, you can draw a pretty good line through the channel and then between France and all the Germanic countries. So, all the Anglo Germanic countries, highly regulated. All of
Yeah.
the Latin countries, France, Spain, Italy, Portugal, much, much easier. Still not easy, but comparatively much easier. So, when I hit those roadblocks that essentially showed me it was going to be far too expensive, both in terms of time and money, I looked for lower hanging fruit. And I used a lot of data. I'm purposefully inserting this as a segue because I know you want to talk about booking data later. Thanks to Zaui, I do have an enormous amount of data on my existing customers in Paris, so I know where they come from. I know where they stay also when they're in town. So I knew that occupancy rates for five-star hotels was a healthy indicator of where my potential customers are traveling to. So I looked at five-star hotel occupancy rates across Europe, and in the top three is consistently Paris and Madrid. And so I took a deeper look at Madrid. No sidecar tour operators. Regulations are somewhat more accessible, um, only slightly more accessible than Paris. It's still a whole other country and has a whole bunch of issues to navigate, but doable. And on top of it, I have an uncle who lives in Madrid, and I worked there when I was a teenager. So my Spanish is okay, and I know the city. So it then came down to just finding the right tour guides to be there and be kind of my man on the ground, jack of all trades. Managed to find him. Put my HR hat on and went to work there.
Yeah, yeah. So it had its own challenges then, with this new. How long have you been in Madrid now?
Only since June, so it's been 6 months.
Wow, so I
Very
guess,
end of June. It's like
yeah,
28th
yeah.
of June is when we finally got our vehicles. The business was declared and registered in a year ago, but it took forever for us to get our vehicles. So we've only been able to operate since the last couple days of June. And Madrid is an oven in July and August. So it's unlike Northern European cities, Paris included. Madrid has a big crater in its bookings in July and August. So we got our vehicles right when everything died.
Yeah.
And then we had to pick up from scratch in September.
Well, I guess the sidecar kind of helps with the heat because you get the wind in your hair. Well, with the helmet.
Yeah, but you're
You
also
get
right
to
under the
leave.
blazing sun.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Um, okay, cool. Okay, so let's actually, you did mention technology there, so let's kind of shift gears towards technology because, you're able to use technology in a few different points of your business and growth. So I want to dig into a few of those. First and foremost, let's just go back to the beginning. When you made the decision that, okay, it's time for me to look for a reservation system, what was that trigger? How did you know that, okay, it's time that I should be finding a system for me?
Oh, I knew that from day one.
Yeah.
Just having worked for a large company before and understanding some of the motivations behind the booking journey, the path to purchase. Um, Having to make someone send me an email and book using Google Calendar or something like that. It doesn't look very professional from a customer standpoint, and it's always difficult to switch afterwards from not having a proper system to putting everything into a system. I figured I might as well start from day one with booking software. It would just, especially in Paris, which is, as you said, a highly competitive market, and seeing the competition that I had from the other sidecar tour operator, I knew I needed to position myself as close to or above in terms of professionalism. And you can't pretend to be a professional tour operator, a city day tour operator without booking software. That's my opinion. I know there are some that don't have it, but um,
Yeah,
I,
for sure. I
I
mean,
thought that it
especially
was necessary.
2026 now, right? Like it's
Yeah.
pretty expected that they should have an easy to book your activities. Okay, so you had also mentioned a little bit earlier that you were looking at quite a few different options. How did you decide on Zawi?
Zaui had a very unfair advantage compared to other booking softwares. So first was that in my old company we used Zaui for years, and then when I was shopping around for my own very new business that didn't even have any bookings yet, I sent emails out to multiple, and I got an email back from a john@zaui.com, and I wonder if this is a John who I used to work with who also had to leave because of COVID. And I realized it was him. It was my old buddy John from my previous days. I don't know if I can mention.
Yeah, John Voci. Shout out John Voci.
Yeah, shout out to John. So we had been colleagues for a long time. We always got along very well, albeit he was in the U.S. office and I was based out of Paris. So we only saw each other once or twice a year for work events, but always had a blast. We hit it off every time, and he one because I already knew the system. He waived the startup fee. So when you're fresh, when you're starting a business fresh, that's important. I think at the time it was like a 1,500 euro startup fee, because Zowie is somewhat complex, but that comes with its own benefits. I'd rather something a little complex that then actually functions the way I want rather than something that's overly simple and at the end of the day causes me a giant waste of time because it's unconfigurable. So, uh, so, so John really hooked me up. He allowed me to have a kind of Frankenstein's monster of a plan that was a high percentage, but it was only variable. And starting out, I didn't want any fixed costs, so he really hooked me up there.
Awesome. Okay, so then you mentioned that Zawi was able to help you with just getting data to help you make decisions. Can you dig a little bit deeper into how Zawi helped you make better decisions?
Yeah, there's a lot of data that you can configure Zowie to collect from from customers in the booking process. Sam, are you still there? Okay, cool. Sorry, your video cut out for a second. So, Zaui, and what's nice is that this is also something very configurable. Um, you can collect a little or a lot of data from your guests when they book. I really only need the passenger totals and their phone numbers because people get lost in foreign cities, so it's handy to give them a call, say, "Where are you?" And using those phone numbers, when I pull a booking report and I focus on phone numbers, I can extract area codes and see exactly where people are booking from, or rather where they're from, where they live. So I can see what my feeder cities are, and I can then either dial up or down my marketing spend in those cities. Also, knowing that a lot of our guests are families with children and they travel based on school holidays. So, seeing where people come from allows me to then also see when they're going to be on school holidays and dial up or down my marketing spend according to when they're going to be on school holidays. So I can say, okay, well, this is when everybody in the Dallas Fort Worth area. This is when they go when their schools are out. So I'm gonna put an extra lump of marketing spend the month leading up to that, or month and a half, depending. So that's another big bit of data I can pull. I can see what the lead up time is between activity and purchase date. I mean, it's going to take too long to say everything that I can pull from the reports in Zaui. But what I like is that it's very configurable, and depending on what I want to know, I'll I'll play with my reports and pull the data that I want.
It's awesome. Happy to
That
hear.
was, that was just one example.
Yeah, for sure. Well, did Zowie help improve your sales in any way? Because I mean, looking at your, year over year growth, it's pretty amazing to see that type of growth. Would you say that Zowie was able to help in any way?
Yeah, I mean that's where all my data comes from, and all of my decisions are based on my data. So yeah, it's the starting point for making business decisions. I don't know how people do it without any booking data.
Yeah, for sure. What about specific sales tools? I mean, because with Zowie we do connect to the OTAs. Is that a channel that you were
Right.
able to use?
Um, yes. So OTAs, well, OTAs are kind of like their own thing. My competitor is all over them. So that's another thing that made me not spend too much time or effort on OTAs. Even today in Paris, they all combined, Get Your Guide, Viator, all of them together, only account for just barely 10%. It's like 9 point something or other percent of total revenue. But what Zowie is great for is facilitating my B2B relationships, because I saw where my competitor was. I purposefully angled towards areas where I felt like they might have not been taking as much of the pie, and a big piece of that was the local DMCs and travel agencies, and it's very easy for them to connect on their own, or for me to make custom net rates, commissionable rates. It allows me to make a much more attractive pitch to my B2B partners.
That's awesome. And then, I think one of the strategies that you've kind of mentioned earlier that was working very well for you was just the direct channels. How were
Mhm.
you able to really focus on that channel?
Well, I think I said it at the beginning when I was trying to get the website done. I initially looked into doing it myself, but I'm really not very good at that stuff. And I'm lucky that one of my cousins is a professional web developer, so he did it for me on the down low, and then taught me how to do some basic maintenance and updates, changing content and all that. So the I really put a lot of time and effort into making our website look decent, and Zowie connects easily with the website, and I'm very eager to update how Zaui interfaces with my website because there's some cool new functionality that you've been telling me about, and I still
Yeah,
my cousin is actually doing a little bit of updating right now, so I'm not touching the website this week, but on
yeah,
Monday I'm going to be diving entirely into that.
that's awesome. Excited to see the new changes made there. Well, Simon, this has been such an amazing conversation. I think there were so many great takeaways there that I'm sure our listeners are going to absolutely love to hear. Maybe before I let you off, I did write down some kind of rapid fire questions. Why don't I throw some of those at you, and then we can close this off. So I got 6 questions here for you. I'm gonna ask him. Just give me the first thing that comes to your mind. You can keep it pretty short and simple there. But okay, what is the single most important metric that every tour operator should know by heart? I
Um,
guess they're not easy.
yeah, no, the single most important metric.
Yeah,
Uh, Gosh, man, that
sales, where your
you're
sales are
really
coming from.
starting hard.
Yeah.
I would say what you can argue this so many different ways. What I like to look at, what occupies a lot of my brain space is booking pace. It's how many bookings are coming in this year relative to a previous period. It's the health of the faster the pace compared to whatever period you're comparing it to, the better the health. The pace goes down, then you have to start. That triggers snooping and seeing what is affecting that pace. So bookings pace
Right,
is,
right.
is very very important metric.
To do more than with just sales itself, because now that tells you if your marketing is going well, if you're kind of doing the right things in a lot of different aspects of the business itself. Okay, so next one. Let's actually talk about marketing. What is one marketing tactic or one of those old school marketing things that you think actually works better than social media?
Oh, um, your local network, kind of, people who write newsletters, travel writers, if you manage to know any of them, anybody who is an expert on the market that you're touring in. If they generate any content, then and you get featured, that's a huge help. That was my marketing strategy in the first year, and it worked incredibly well. And none of it was social media. I got into the Washington Post just because a friend of mine was a travel writer, and she's like, "Hey, I want to pitch something unique to my editor at the Washington Post." So I took her out on tour, and it went out end of August digitally, early September in print, and you can see it in the booking chart. August is calming down, and once that went live, things took off.
I guess that's the other thing about. I mean, if we're talking about old school marketing tactic in this specific business, I feel like word of mouth is probably a very strong thing because yeah, if I experience one of these, I'll tell people. Like it's one of those. Yeah,
It's another bit of data that Zowie makes easy to pull. So I know that in 2025, of direct website bookings, 44% found us by word of mouth.
it's a pretty key metric
Word,
to
word
know.
of mouth is huge.
Um, okay, well, what city would you expand to next?
Good question. Should I keep that confidential? There's a, there's
All
a
right,
few.
give us a ballpark general location. Europe.
I mean, if I'm in France and Spain, the logical next one is Italy. That's the next big destination for,
Yeah,
especially the North American market.
yeah, and you know what? That's a pretty big kind of location for just mopeds and that type of transportation, anyways, and cool little streets to be kind of zipping by in one
Hmm.
of these sidecars. Yeah, I can see that. I can see that. That's awesome. I guess the last question to kind of end it off here. What is your one favorite feature in Zowie?
Oh yeah. I mean, I've said it. I think a few times. It's all the reporting tools.
Porting.
I need that data. I'm
Yeah,
hungry for it, and I
yeah.
can't. I don't like making guesswork decisions. I like seeing empirical data that then I can use to make future decisions. It's invaluable.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I guess you'll be happy to hear last week we launched Nera AI, which is pretty much everything that you just said, but kind of a very smart AI engine that goes in there, looks at historical data, looks at different factors, and gives you actual actionable information. So it's going to tell you that, hey, on this date, you sold so many, maybe it's a good time for you to either increase or decrease your price, stuff like that. But yeah, there's a lot of new features that we're building around information and data and AI, so you can essentially make better business decisions based on these tools, and it's not just kind of little wrappers of AI. But yeah, we're very, very excited about what we just launched. We got more features coming out in the later into the year, and yeah, it's an area that we're investing very, very heavily. Um, well, Simon, I think that's a great place to wrap this all up. Thank you so much for your time here today. Thank you so much for this conversation.
Very welcome, Sam. It was a pleasure.